And from ABSA, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
East London in the Eastern Cape had been starved of international and local off-road motorsport for years, but courtesy of ABSA and the African Heritage Cross Country World Cup second leg, that all changed at the end of July. Round 5 of the ABSA Off-Road Championships, run in conjunction with the international event, was held in and around the picturesque city, and round 5 of the nationals was, as always, a squeaker. Toyota's rally expert Mark Cronje won the prologue, and Berthold and Houghton were intent on removing the Ford filling, Schroeder and Huxtable, between the Castrol-Toyota sandwich. Krobler and Jordan too were closing, albeit slowly trying to conserve car and getting as much as possible out of the Navara at the same time. Voss is becoming a master himself at conserving and wringing every ounce out of the car, while Visser at Badenhorst had made giant strides this season. Berthold and Minute brought the first special vehicle car into view in 7th place overall. And Ford were happy to have 2 of their chargers in the top 10, Woolridge and Scholthammer firing on all cylinders. The Micron Excel dealer team Toyota of the De Brains raced by next, holding station in 9th, while Cox and Tersteger seemed to have sorted out their early season troubles with the new Spec 3 bat. Corbett and Balzar were cleverly trying to conserve, yet trying to stake a claim in the SP class. They were 6th, but over the rougher terrain the specials were closing them down, with Alberts and Hunter and Variawa and Rousseau chasing hard. Matthews and Smith were next, and had obviously cranked it wide open as they'd started 12 seconds behind Harkis and Moore, but had found a way past. While the Ford pair were also trying to look after the car in the fast sweeping parts of the route. Hutchison and Bergman were experiencing alternator and electrical problems and had dropped 2 places, but write the former national champ off at your own peril. Silwalt and Hellberg were smooth and quick over the first part of the route and were looking for a solid follow-up to their good Botswana showing, with the Harpers sticking to their pre-prologue word by going out very cautiously early on. They were 8th, with the second Silwalt car just a few ticks further back. And Musaji and Bodhanya forcing our cameraman to take evasive action here. Granted, they were riding in the dust. As they did in Botswana for all but the last few Ks of around 1,000 Ks, Mark Cronje and Chris Birkin were still leading, but the Castrol Toyota had lost one eye. Krobler was hoping to make it 5 consecutive wins for Nissan and 3 for him, with his stablemate Duncan Voss, also a former champ, applying his own pressure just behind the battle for the lead. Woolridge and Scholthammer had moved up 4 places and had the Ford Ranger dancing to a merry tune, while Corbett and Balzar, ever mindful of another 1,000 Ks ahead of them, kept it smooth with the next Nissan Navara. Alberts and Hunter and the Rapsa Bat were enjoying their stint up front and were finding it very much to their liking. As it was, there'd already been 4 different winners in the special category in 07, and it looked like it may have been 5. Hutchison and Bergman, after having lost teammate Cox to the same problem, were still battling their alternator in the Bat Spec 3. They've been beset with problems since unveiling the new Chariot. But the biggest movers of the day were certainly the Harpers. Their Atlas Copco Bat just kept getting better, and so did they. They were up into the top 10 and still climbing, with Variawa also moving up the batting order in a fine drive, but he had Silwalt and Muller all over his exhaust pipes. The Barkhuizens were smooth and seemed to enjoy themselves thoroughly in the mountains, but disaster awaited them as they rolled, and as a result failed to see it out to the finish. The Zermattens, conversely, were regaining their consistency in the Ryobi Nissan and were up into the top 12. Taylor and Keith were continuing their giant killing act, and the little JRE was purring along very nicely. But up front, Cronje was still dictating matters and steaming on the way home. He had a 3-minute lead, as Robert crashed out with just 45 Ks left to go. And that left Voss and Pitchford in the Hunter's seat, having to chase for all they were worth, and they did one heck of a job of it. That also elevated the Ford duo Woolridge and Scholthammer to 3rd, and with the locals hollering encouragement, the pair set about trying to close the gap to Voss. The Zermattens, Henry and Maurice, were consolidating their fine return to form with a place in the top 10 in the Ryobi Nissan. While Variawa and Rousseau had got stuck in a ditch and then suffered a flat to drop them back. With their teammate Schroeder having to call it a day after losing 4-wheel drive, Peckham and Santoro and the diesel Ford Ranger 4-litre had made a big surge and were up into the top 15, while the brothers White, David and Gary also entered for the long haul in the heritage race with Smooth and nursing the Rurikon bat. And Taylor and Keith were still steaming along, up from 18th in the specials to 11th. In Class D, the Weichholtz, Cliff and Louis were second, chasing after the Zermattens and just 4 minutes in arrears. And in Class B, the Besaidnoids were 8 minutes behind in the second Adenko bat. While Rundle and Roberts, second in Class E, had their fair share of electrical troubles and were nursing at home, although it didn't look like it. But the Nissan pairing charged past a stricken Cronje and his Toyota. Voss and a beaming Pitchford made it 5 for 5 and a second consecutive win for Voss as he widened the championship points gap at the top of the log. A fine second win in a row for Voss, and that left him sitting healthily atop the championship log, while the Ford Dio, Woolridge and Scholthammer rued their run of non-finishes in the early season. Still, there were 3 races left to finish of the 07 season, and a lot could still have happened. In the specials, a rock-solid victory for Alberts and Hunter, while their second place consolidates the Hoppers as the championship leaders with a very healthy margin, and it would clearly have taken a lot to knock them off their perch. Polokwane in the Limpopo province was the place for the Ford Motorrad 400, a tough and uncompromising 460-kilometer long race, the 6th leg of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, based at the Moropa Casino and Entertainment World with a completely new and thus very challenging route. The flag dropped, setting the prologue winners, the Rapsa bat of Alberts and Hunter, free on what turned out to be an overcast start to the day. Championship leaders, the Harpers, were next, just 15 seconds back, with Cox and Tersteger just 3 seconds behind them and chasing from the word go. And the 2006 special class winner Berthold, with Minute giving it stick from the start too in the second Atlas Copco Porter. With Varyawa and Rousseau's 7-litre engine growling behind them, and the Porter was ready for some serious punishment in 4th place on a route that the specials liked. Hutchison and Bergman were in a hurry, chasing the Total Motorsport team's dust and closing the gap. Visser and Badenhorst were themselves battling the dust of the 6 specials in front of them, with only 46 seconds separating them. Matthews and Smith sped by after 100-odd Ks of racing, and their bat was sounding particularly throaty early in the morning. And the dust was certainly a factor for Mossaji and Borhanya, who were just 9 seconds behind the Century Property Development's bat. Front though, and with less than 100 Ks to go, Alfie Cox had mustered an incredible surge and passed all the traffic in front of him. The Master Blaster was flying, while his fellow defending national champ Hannes Schrobler had gone by no less than 12 cars to get into second. A phenomenal drive. They were followed by Matthews and Smith in the red, blue and yellow of the Century Properties bat, but Hutchison and Bergman next scooted into view and overtook in one huge fury. The 05 champion wanted to be the 07 champ. Woolridge and Scholthammer had had a strange season that started with a few DNFs, and it was about to continue on the same note. With a Regent crew, the Cries keeping the throttle wide open. Berthold and Houghton experienced a few small problems but had endured and were up into 3rd in the SP car class. The Weichholtz were also super steady, and it slipped past the BB Auto team in their Nissan to lead in Class D, a jump of almost 25 places. Polokwane team, Duplessis and Knox holding on for dear life in second. They were less than 30 seconds behind at this stage. Class E leader Peckham and Santoro had even less breathing space, as they were only 28 seconds ahead of their nearest pursuers. And in Class S, Schilling and Davies had finally taken the lead in the Plastotech Raceco. Despite hitting a donga and injuring his back, Richard was back in front. But Gary Bertolt and Jeff Minnitt were keeping them under pressure after battling some minor problems themselves. The dust was almost unbearable at times and made vision a guessing game. The Barkhuisens, despite, were up into 9th in the production car class and 2nd in Class E. And the Raysonics crew in the whiteness and hard body were in 10th and 3rd in Class D. With the Kopanang Hotel team, Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn, who had a solid run and took 12th in the specials and 2nd in class. The Moffats, Mark and Stewart in their Bosel Toyota had also quietly worked their way to just outside the top 10 and 3rd in class. At the line, though, after the desert's rough and tumble, Grobler and Jordan only needed applause as they won handsomely in 7 hours and 21 minutes. They had a victory margin of more than 12 minutes, a sterling drive, and one of the finishes of the season for the Burley man and his trusty navigator. Hutchison and Bergman were just 3 minutes behind and comfortably won the special vehicle battle after conserving on the first lap, a strategy that paid off. Matthews had problems, but he and Smith still brought it home for a fine 2nd place, almost 6 minutes back. Grobler's win gave him a shot at a 4th national off-road title, but Force's steady drive certainly kept him installed as the favourite on the championship log. With Hutchison's win, he closed the gap, but the Harpers seemed to have it all sewn up. Or was there yet another kink in this year's Special Vehicle Championship tale? The father and son had a 15-point breather over the Motorite pair with 2 races to go.
Vehicle